I know you've probably seen them before, the little colored flags lined through your or a neighbor's front yard. These flags, of course, mark underground utility lines, things like gas, water, sewer, cable, etc., and are usually marked so that homeowners, contractors, or utility workers don't hit the lines when digging. Quick PSA, always call 811 to have your utilities marked before you dig. It's free and will keep you and your neighbors safe. But oh no, these flags run right through your beautiful flower bed you built in your front yard. Guess what? If the utility company needs to dig in that area, they have every right to, and destroying your flowers and your front lawn in the process. Do you have any ability to stop them? Almost certainly not. Technically, when you buy a piece of property, you will normally own the rights to the land, what is on the land, under the land, and above. And no, you don't get the right to restrict airline traffic. But I think it makes sense to most of us why utilities need to run across property lines. After all, how could we have utility access if these lines didn't pass through private property? But have you ever wondered how ownership applies to these utilities that run through and under our properties? And are there any other type of allowances like this that impact property ownership? Yes, and some of them are called easements. A property easement is a legal right to use a portion of someone else's land for a specific type of use. And they are important to understand when preparing to buy a piece of property. Many property owners believe that because they own the property, they control most, if not all, activities that occur on the property. And that, of course, is not always true. I'll write another article about covenants and HOA restrictions in the future. Those, of course, are other types of property limitations. And while there are several other types of restrictions or special provisions on private property ownership, easements are one of, if not the most common type. Easements can be granted for a wide variety of purposes. The most common is the allowance to the utility companies to build and access lines like we've discussed. But there are other reasons for easements, such as providing access to neighboring property, or even allowing neighbors to use a portion of your land as a driveway. For example, you might be looking at a property in which the neighbor's property has no direct access to a main road. So the neighbor might have been granted an easement on the property you are considering in order to cross over and access their own property. An obvious clue to this situation might be a shared driveway, but this isn't always the case. So what are the legal implications of having an easement on your property? If you own a property with an easement on it, there are several important legal implications to consider. First and foremost, you cannot interfere with the rights of the easement holder to use the portion of that land covered by the easement. For example, if you have an easement that allows a neighbor to use a portion of your land as a driveway, you cannot park your car in the driveway blocking them off or build a structure on it. If you build a fence over a otherwise restricted utility easement, you may have to remove it. Additionally, easements can impact the value of your property. If you have an easement on your property, it may make your property less attractive to potential buyers, especially if the easement restricts the use of a significant portion of your land. On the other hand, if your property benefits from an easement, such as a shared driveway or access to a lake, for example, it may increase the value of your property. It is important to note that easements are typically permanent and what we call run with the land, meaning that they are binding on future owners of the property. So if you are considering purchasing a property with an easement on it, it is essential to fully understand the terms and implications of the easement before proceeding with your purchase. So learn about easements when considering a property for purchase. When deciding on potential properties for purchase, it is important to be knowledgeable about easements and their impact on your property. First, pay attention to the seller's disclosure when considering properties for purchase. Sellers are required to disclose any known easements. If there is a situation like a shared driveway, ask about requirements for upkeep, repair, or replacement of the driveway. For example, do you and the neighboring property owner share these costs? What is the process for deciding when repair or replacement is needed and how is it done? If a formal agreement has been established, you will want to know and understand that ahead of time. You will also want to understand how an easement might restrict the use of the property. Thinking back on utility easements, say you own a dog and want to build a fence in the backyard. Knowing where those utility easements run might affect where you may build that fence, impacting the attractiveness of the property as a buyer. Or think back to the flower bed. Understanding where the easements run will influence places to avoid when investing time, energy, and money into special landscaping or building projects. The reality is, most properties feature at least some type of easement, so they aren't necessarily something you have to avoid at all costs. But being knowledgeable of them ahead of time might save you some confusion and frustration later. Furthermore, there might be a situation where the location and terms of an easement do impact the desirability of a property. So, knowing these things can help you to make the right decision ahead of time. And if you want to be extra certain of easements, ask your real estate agent if they can help you find the historical or legal descriptions of that property.